You leave the conversation feeling worse than when it started, but you can't explain why. Nothing bad happened. Technically, they smiled, they nodded, they said the right things. Yet something in your chest tightened. Something felt off. You replay it later, searching for the moment that justified the feeling, and you come up empty. So you tell yourself you're overthinking. You're being paranoid. They're your friend. But here's what your gut already knows. Fake friends don't betray you loudly. They do it in ways you can't quite call out, ways that make you question yourself instead of them. They clap for you, then disappear. They offer support that somehow leaves you feeling smaller, and you end up stuck in this loop of wondering whether you're the problem. This video breaks that loop. You'll learn the 3 types of fake friends, how to spot each one before the damage accumulates, and exactly what to say when you recognize the pattern, without drama, without blowing up the friendship, without second-guessing yourself afterward. There's also a quick test near the middle that makes it obvious which type you're dealing with. Type 1 is the spotlight friend. They're with you until the attention shifts your way. Type 2 is the transactional friend. They show up when there's something to gain. Type 3 is the quiet saboteur. They disguise cruelty as honesty and make you feel crazy for noticing. Let's start with type 1 because this one looks the most normal until you actually win at something. The spotlight friend seems supportive at first. They hype you up, they cheer you on, they act like they're in your corner. But watch what happens when something good actually happens to you. When you get the promotion, the relationship, the recognition, suddenly the energy shifts, the enthusiasm dims. They change the subject quickly or find a way to redirect the conversation back to themselves. Your win becomes an interruption rather than a celebration. Here's how to spot it. They joke about your success in ways that don't quite land as jokes. They minimize what you accomplished. Oh, that's cool, I guess. Or immediately pivot to their own struggles so you end up comforting them instead of being celebrated. They might even bring up a time they did something similar, subtly implying theirs was harder or more impressive. The pattern becomes clear over time. They're fine with you doing well, as long as you're not doing better than them. What's actually happening underneath? Their sense of self is built on comparison. Your success doesn't feel like your success to them, it feels like their failure. So they manage their discomfort by shrinking your moment. They're not necessarily aware they're doing it, but the impact is the same. You start censoring your own good news. You downplay your wins before sharing them. You learn that being excited around this person isn't safe. How to deal with it. You don't have to blow up the friendship, but you do need to protect your energy. When they minimize something you're proud of, try this. I'm sharing good news. Now, if you can't be happy for me right now, I'll keep this stuff to myself. Say it calmly, without accusation. It sets a boundary without escalating. If the pattern continues, you have your answer, and you can start allocating your excitement elsewhere to people who can actually hold it. Another line that works. I'm not competing with you. Sometimes naming the dynamic is enough to shift it. Sometimes it's not. Either way, you've stopped pretending the tension doesn't exist. Now, type 2 is easier to miss because it doesn't feel personal. It just feels like they're busy, but the pattern is consistent once you see it. The transactional friend operates on a simple equation. What can I get from this? They reach out when they need advice, a favor, a connection, someone to vent to. The friendship activates when there's a benefit and goes dormant when there isn't. Plans happen on their schedule, around their needs, in service of their goals. And when you're the one going through something, they're swamped. They'll check in later. They mean to reach out but keep forgetting. Here's how to spot it. Track the pattern honestly. When do they initiate contact? What's usually the context? Do they ever show up just to show up with no agenda, no request, no extraction? Or does every conversation eventually circle back to something they need? Another tell, how do they respond when you can't help? If your unavailability creates friction, coldness, or guilt trips, you're not a friend to them. You're a resource. And resources don't get to have boundaries. What's actually happening underneath? They've learned to move through relationships strategically rather than authentically. Maybe they grew up in an environment where connection was transactional. Maybe they've never had friendships that weren't built on exchange. The origin matters less than the result. You feel drained every time you hang up the phone. You feel used without being able to prove it. You start resenting them, but also feeling guilty for the resentment, like you're being selfish for wanting reciprocity. How to deal with it? Stop over-functioning in the friendship. When they ask for something you don't want to give, practice this. I can't help with that. No explanation, no justification, no apology, just a clean no. If they push, repeat it. If they guilt you, notice that, and remember it the next time they reach out. For a softer but still firm approach, I'm keeping my energy for friendships that go both ways. This makes the expectation explicit without attacking them. It gives them a chance to show up differently. Most won't, but at least you'll stop wondering whether you're imagining the imbalance. Before we get to type 3, let's make this concrete. Here's the quick test. 3 questions. Be honest. First, do they celebrate you when there's nothing in it for them? When your win doesn't benefit them at all, when there's no audience to perform for, are they genuinely happy? If not, that's type 1 showing. Second, do they only reach out when they need something? Think about the last 5 times they initiated contact. What was the context? If there's always an ask attached, that's type 2. Third, do you feel smaller after talking to them? Not during, after. When the conversation ends and you're alone with your thoughts, do you feel energized or deflated, supported or subtly criticized? If you consistently feel worse, that's type 3. And this one's the most damaging because it makes you doubt your own perception. Type 3 is the quiet saboteur. This person doesn't attack you openly. That would be too easy to identify and reject. Instead, they deliver harm wrapped in plausible deniability. They disguise cruelty as honesty, negativity as concern, and criticism as just trying to help. When you react, they flip it. Suddenly you're the one with the problem. You're too sensitive. You can't take feedback. They were just being real with you. Here's how to spot it. Backhanded compliments are their specialty. You're so brave for wearing that. I could never post something that vulnerable, but good for you. You're doing really well for someone in your situation. The words sound supportive, but the feeling underneath is something else. They also love the phrase, "I'm just being honest," right after saying something hurtful. As if honesty requires cruelty. As if kindness and truth can't coexist. Another tell how they respond to your boundaries. When you push back on something that hurt, do they get curious and accountable? Or do they frame your reaction as the problem? "I didn't mean it like that. You're overreacting. Why are you so defensive?" This is the flip, the move that makes you question your own experience. Over time, you stop trusting your gut around them. You start wondering if maybe you are too sensitive. Maybe you do take things too personally. That doubt is the damage. What's actually happening underneath? Some quiet saboteurs are deeply insecure and manage it by keeping others small. Your confidence threatens them, so they chip away at it in ways they can deny. Others genuinely believe they're being helpful. They've confused criticism with care, never learned that feedback can be delivered with warmth. Either way, the result is the same. You feel worse after every interaction, but you can't quite prove why. How to deal with it? When they deliver a veiled insult disguised as honesty, call the pattern. "That's not helpful. Try again." It's direct without being aggressive. It names the problem without explaining yourself into a corner. If they get defensive, that's information. For repeat offenses, if you can't speak respectfully, this conversation is over. Then follow through. End the call. Leave the room. Stop responding. You don't owe anyone access to you while they tear you down and call it friendship. Here's the rule that ends the confusion with all 3 types. Judge patterns, not moments. Anyone can have an off day. Anyone can say something thoughtless once. But when the same dynamic repeats, when you keep feeling smaller, drained, unsupported, subtly competed with, that's not a bad moment. That's a pattern. And patterns reveal motives that words never will. Real friends are consistent in private, not just performative in public. They celebrate you when no one's watching. They show up when there's nothing to gain. They make you feel more like yourself after spending time with them, not less. If someone consistently fails those tests, the label on the relationship doesn't matter. You can call them a friend, but your nervous system knows the truth. You don't have to cut everyone off. You don't have to have a dramatic confrontation. Sometimes the healthiest move is just reallocating your energy, giving less to the people who drain you and more to the people who fill you up. Let the fake friendships fade through distance rather than explosion. Protect yourself quietly. Save your vulnerability for people who've earned it. Here's what changes once you can name the type. You stop blaming yourself for the discomfort. You stop wondering if you're too sensitive, too needy, too demanding. The confusion lifts because you finally have a framework for what you were feeling all along. Your gut was right. You just didn't have the language to trust it. Now you do. Use it. So tell me, which type have you dealt with? Which pattern finally made sense while you were watching this? Drop it in the comments. I want to know which one you recognized and whether you've tried any of these responses. If this gave you clarity on a friendship you've been confused about, subscribe. We break down the psychology behind everyday behavior in a way that actually makes sense. The next video takes a different angle, the psychology of people with no friends. Because sometimes clearing out fake friendships leaves you with very few people, and that emptiness comes with its own confusion. Is something wrong with you? Are you too picky? Or did you just finally raise your standards? That one's going to reframe how you see solitude. I'll see you there.